Hey there, welcome to another video on how to burn image files to an SD card, in particular dealing with Raspberry Pi images and whatnot. In the previous video I did ahead of this one, we used another program to do just this task, and we used Etcher. And today we're going to use Win32 Disk Imager. To compare the two, it looks like Win32 Disk Imager is at version 1.0 and hasn't had any development for a while, but it still probably seems to work, and it's still fairly popular. So, just like yesterday, we have Win32 Disk Imager downloaded and installed. Here's the icon on our desktop, and here's the image we're going to burn, which is the 11/13/2018 Raspberry Stretch full. So this is Raspbian, basically, and this is just for an example. So, looking at the application, what we have here is we have some fields to fill in and some options that we can deal with. And the first thing being the image file that we are burning. The second being the device we are using to write to. The next being if we want to incorporate hash to where I can't click any of these because I got another window open just so we can make read-only allocated partitions if we want to make this like a semi-live CD type deal where we can execute but not save. But I usually prefer to make those dynamic rather than anything else. But if we click on this right here, it will open up a window and ask us where we want to load our file, and there's our Raspbian Stretch. So we've loaded it, and I can already see one deficiency in the application. It doesn't give us any details on the SD card device we've selected, so be very, very sure you have the device you want selected. This one that I'm using came back with two partitions, and it got very confusing, so I formatted it, and it came back and gave me this drive letter E, even though I didn't assign it a drive letter. But that's what it's calling it. And now we can pick whether we want to do MD5, SHA1, or SHA256 for hash. We can generate it or copy it. We can read data from the device and write it to an image file. That's not what we want to do for the purposes of this video. We can write the image file to the device, or we can verify only. We don't want to verify only because there's nothing on the drive, so we want to write. And it says writing the physical disk can corrupt the device. Target device E, are you sure you want to continue? We're going to select yes, and it's going to take off. Now this actually is about the same amount of time that it took to use Etcher, so first impression, I'm not seeing any advantage to using Win32 Disk Imager over Etcher, and I'm actually seeing more advantages in Etcher based on the fact that it gives you more statistics about the drive that you're working with, because if you have a machine with several drives on it, like my desktop, instead of the laptop that I'm using, it can get quite confusing when you've got 13 drives in the machine and you can't tell which particular specific one was the SD card you wanted to write to, and this application doesn't give you any indication whether or not you're writing to the correct drive. If you're in this particular situation that I'm in using a laptop, I have a C drive and an E drive, and that's all I've got. Well, it's pretty easy to tell that I'm writing to the correct drive because I only have two, and I know I'm not writing to my C drive. I'd give it a down mark just for that particular thing, though, because it is always nice to have confirmation when you're overwriting something with potentially destructive data. It's nice to know what you are writing over. And as I said yesterday, if you're watching this video, you probably came here from another video, and particular one where I was installing an image file for an operating system, generally most likely for the Raspberry Pi that you wanted to know how to do. And I'm going through all the disk imagers first, so you could see kind of what one meets your style the best. We did Etcher yesterday, or Etcher previously, I don't want to say yesterday. Doing Win32 Disk Imager right now. We've got some other ones planned. I'll do Rufus probably, And with Windows, I'm going to do Mac OS if I can get those to operate correctly. I can't promise you I will because my Mac is kind of shaky and old. I do not intend to do any of these for Linux because honestly, if you're using Linux, you've probably written a lot of disk images and you already know how to do that. If there's a desire for it, drop a comment down below. I'll definitely get around to it if you want me to. But as of this time, I have no intention of doing any videos on how to write these in Linux, mostly because they're command line. They're a little more complicated, which honestly warrants some sort of tutorial. However, I don't know that one is really needed because, like I said, most of the people who would be doing it in Linux already know how to do it. So I don't see any real need for it at this time. Again, this is taking approximately the same amount of time. The throughput is about the same as it was, so you're not gaining or losing anything by not using this program or by using this program. It is not any faster, and it is not really any slower. However, like I said, the only thing that I have a problem with is the device settings do not give you any statistics whatsoever about the device you're writing to, so it'd be very easy to overwrite a drive without realizing what you're doing, and it doesn't even give you any details or statistics on the drive when you pull it up. It also doesn't seem to check anything about size, so I'm assuming I could try to write this 5.9 gigabyte image to a 3.9 gigabyte flash drive, and it would try to do it and fail out towards the end, but would still try to accomplish the task. I don't know, and I'm not really going to try that because that's definitely an experiment to do on my own later if I want to. However, I just don't think this has bounds checking of enough reliability built into it, since it can't even determine the size of the device that it's writing to. There are no options. There are no settings to change like we did with Etcher, but it's simple. It really has just a couple buttons you can check. If none of those suit your fancy, then you're probably looking for something a little more complex like Etcher or Rufus to handle the job. And as I said, for the example, we're using Raspbian Stretch, and that is just as an example. We can definitely use this to write the image that you have selected that you want to install, particularly for your Raspberry Pi, to your SD card, or generally for any image that you want to burn to an SD card. And we're using an IMG file, so that makes it pretty easy. I'm pretty sure this could probably also handle an ISO file. They're relatively the same thing. And again, I'll entertain any questions you might have in the comments. Just drop them down there. I've returned after being sick for about a month and having absolutely no voice, so my voice is still a little rough. I apologize for that. However, I really couldn't stay away any longer, and I had to get started making videos again because, well, if you don't get back up on that horse, you're never going to do it. And I definitely needed to do it. So we are 92% rapidly approaching the end, and we'll see what happens when it ends. And I guess this would be the point where you want to do a verify only if you had any doubts as to whether your data was written, but one of our partitions is not even going to show up for Windows to be visible, so I'm not really sure if a verify would work, but it probably would because it probably does a sector by sector verify and compare rather than doing some sort of disk seek. And our write is successful, and we can click OK, and then we can definitely just exit out of the program, and that is that. So that in full is using Win32 Disk Imager with writing an IMG file to an SD card. Now, I don't know that there's any kind of dissertation to go into about SD cards, but as I mentioned in the previous video, if you've seen it, your SD card is not where you want to skimp on savings. You don't want to buy the lowest denominator SD card, the lowest priced SD card that you could find. You definitely want to get something quality because this is your Raspberry Pi's hard drive, and it's going to be written to and read from very, very often. So the more reliable your drive and the faster it is, or your card, the better off you're going to be. If you buy some no brand cheap card and plug it in, well, kind of taking your data's life in its own hands, and reliability may not be its strong suit. As such, I'm going to go ahead and end this now. Next thing we're probably going to do is we're probably going to do Rufus. So I'm going to hit all the imaging possibilities first so I can link them in the videos. And as I said, you're probably coming here from one of my videos, so you can go ahead and return to that video and see what the operating system you're trying to install looks like and what the install looks like. But rather than do this multiple times for every single video, I figured I would just do one video, post it, and then link to it just to make it easy. But this was Win32 Disk Imager, and tomorrow we're probably going to do Rufus because that's another quality program for writing images and ISO files to SD cards and to flash drives. And I don't think I've tried to write an SD card in Rufus, so we'll give it a shot and see what it does. However, I've had pretty good luck with it in the past, and if it fails, it's a good experiment, and we'll definitely get a video saying this is not something you want to do. However, I haven't tried it yet, so we'll do that tomorrow, and we'll move on progress. Once we get done with this, there will be a number of videos about operating systems that can be installed in 2019 for your Raspberry Pi, and we'll touch on all those in short order so you can see all of the alternatives that you have, or at least the popular ones, because there's lots of things that are not so popular. But we're going to hit a bunch of them. I believe I have 13 images I've downloaded just for that. But that's beyond the scope of what I'm talking about here. Again, return to the video you came from, and good luck with your install. Thanks for watching.